3,462,390 minutes. That's the average amount of time a person will spend on social media across her entire life. And it works out to about 6 years and 8 months, 57,000 hours, or a little under 3 hours a day. That is a lot of time, and I'm sure most of us would like to have some of that time back. And so a few months ago I decided to do a little experiment. Could I quit social media, gain back those 3 hours a day, and become the world's healthiest, most productive individual ever? Well, spoiler alert, didn't work. And I now think I know why. And so I want to share a few ideas that might help you if you're trying to do a similar thing. But before we get to that, there are a few ideas we need to understand first. Why you love social media. In any conversation about social media, there's one word that inevitably dominates. Algorithm. But what actually is an algorithm, and why are social media algorithms so addictive and so good at keeping us hooked? An algorithm, in essence, is a set of steps designed to take in a known input and reliably produce a particular outcome. You can think of it like a recipe. You take your ingredients, follow the steps laid out in the recipe, and end up with a lovely cooked meal at the end of it. Applying this idea to YouTube, the ingredients would be your viewing history, how much time you spent watching those videos, whether you liked, commented, or subscribed on the video, and a myriad of other factors. And the outcome would be a personalised homepage full of suggestions chosen out just for you. And they serve a really useful purpose. In the last 2 minutes alone, over 700,000 tweets have been posted on Twitter, 1 million comments have been posted on Facebook, and over 1,000 hours of content has been uploaded to YouTube. In fact, there's more content uploaded to YouTube in a single day than you could watch in an entire lifetime. And that's one of the reasons why they exist, to save us all a whole bunch of effort, to allow us to click a single link and get a bunch of content that we'll enjoy and that might be helpful for us. And if that was all they did, then it'd be a pretty noble thing. But unfortunately, that's not the entire story. Why you hate social media. This guy is Asa Raskin. You've probably never heard of him, but he's likely had a pretty big impact on your life. But to understand why, we need to first of all talk about the darker side of social media algorithms. Okay, so remember a little earlier when I said that algorithms exist to separate the mountains of content into the things we'll like and the things we won't? Well, that was a bit of a lie. You see, algorithms aren't interested in enjoyment, but rather in engagement. How much time you spend using a particular service. And there's a subtle difference there. Engagement, on the whole, can be positive or negative. And for the most part, these algorithms aren't interested in how beneficial the content you consume is to your life. They're just interested in eyes on the page. And unfortunately for us, there is an endless supply of engaging content. There is more stuff out there that you would enjoy than you can physically watch. And that brings us to Asa Raskin's invention. The infinite scroll. It's something that most of us take for a given, especially on social media. But it wasn't always there. Once upon a time, you had pages. And pages serve a really important psychological purpose. They signal to your brain that you've reached the end of a task. They forced you to make a decision, whether to continue and potentially get a reward, or whether to move on with your life and do something useful. The infinite scroll, on the other hand, bypasses this entirely, and it rewards you for doing nothing. You're not given the chance to ask for more content, you're simply given it. And if you're rewarded for doing nothing, then you'll do nothing. And so when you consider all of these factors, it seems almost like a no-brainer, right? Quit social media, gain back 3 hours a day, become productive, healthy, happy, and live the life of my dreams. Unfortunately, it didn't work like that. And so I want to teach you a few of the lessons that I learned through my little time away from the Matrix. How not to quit. Okay, so beyond just the inevitable superiority complex you get when you delete a social media account, I actually got a lot of the expected benefits too at first. I felt like I had more time, more energy, I wasn't obsessively checking my phone, and I almost felt like I was forced to do something useful. And for the first few days and weeks, it felt pretty amazing. But unfortunately, all good things do have to come to an end. It turns out that people are really easy to distract. Like, really easy. And before social media existed, we weren't all super productive machines working 16 hours a day doing everything we wanted. There were other distractions. If I didn't make an active effort to decide what to do with my time, then I would gravitate towards the path of least resistance. Sometimes that did mean reading the book that I'd been meaning to read. Sometimes it was listening to a few classic albums that I'd saved up. But other times that meant picking up an old video game from my childhood and playing it deep into the night. Either way, distractions came, and they came in many different forms. Even when I did sit down to do something you might consider productive, I had to accept that infinite time does not equal infinite productivity. I think the expectations that people set for a life without social media can be a bit lofty. The reality is, fundamentally, you're still the same person, whether or not you have a Facebook account. Your problems are your problems, and they don't vanish just because your data has. In fact, the biggest benefits and the biggest challenges were not necessarily what I expected going into it. And one of the biggest challenges that I had to face personally was just accepting the fact that being alone is really hard. Being online kind of tricks you in a way. It convinces you that you have this really wide social network that you can kind of rely on at any time, when the reality is, for most of us over the last few years at least, we've been pretty much alone. And being alone is pretty uncomfortable. We all have thoughts and beliefs about ourselves that we don't like, and being online gives you the opportunity to kind of be your idealized self, to pretend that those undesirable parts of your own personality don't exist. It's a kind of escapism. And I think that's why quitting social media can be difficult for a lot of people. You don't have the opportunity to be your virtual self. You just have to be your real self. And that's not always the most attractive proposition. And when you do get tired of being by yourself, you have to eventually reach out to people. You have to decide who's important to you, even when you aren't being constantly reminded that they exist by your phone. And that led me to realize that maintaining relationships is also really hard. Really, really hard. So we often treat friendships like they're this kind of binary contract. You're either in or you're out. But I think the reality is a little different. Relationships are kind of like living things to me. They need to be nurtured or kept alive to thrive, right? Some friendships can be more like a cactus. You can go months and months without interacting and pick up right where you left off. Others are more like flowers and need some daily care and attention to reach their full potential. But across the board, they need work. And although this isn't a massive realization, putting in the actual effort is another story entirely. For some people, it was a lot easier. For others, it was a lot more difficult. But at the end of the day, they all need active love, effort, and attention. And it was at this point that I was forced to maybe admit to myself that maybe the socials weren't all that bad. Okay, hear me out. Social media could provide that little bit of insight into a friend's life that I needed to make a connection. That little spark to light the fire of our friendships. On its own, social media can be quite vapid and pointless, but if you add a layer of purpose to it, it can rapidly become something that's quite nice. And I realised that I could get back on social media without necessarily having that horrible feeling that I was wasting my life away. How to actually quit. To me, the secret to quitting, or at least reducing screen time, came down to one word really: intention. It's what makes or breaks the entire thing. If you can't figure out why you want to quit, then you won't be able to tell if you're making progress. If you don't have a clear idea of what you want to do with your time once you've quit, then you'll naturally gravitate towards the path of least resistance. And if you don't know what success looks like in your mind, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. To me, intention means using social media as a supplement to my real life, rather than a substitute. It means accepting that it's my responsibility to not fall prey to the algorithm. That if I want to keep people in my life close, I need to make an active effort and put in the time and the work to do that. And it means also accepting that people will drift in and out of your life, even if you follow them on Instagram. But it's also accepting that progress is never linear, and that you'll have good days and bad days, no matter how strong your purpose is. But if you approach tasks with a sense of intention and a sense of purpose, you'll always be proud of yourself, no matter how well it goes. And what more can you ask for at the end of the day?